am 60 years old now, and when I look back at my life, I feel like I am looking at a movie that began with joy and ended with endless sorrow. My name is Anna, and today, as I sit here on this old sofa in a dimly lit room in Mumbai, I want to tell you a story. Not just any story, but my life. A story of love, dreams, betrayal, and regret. I was once a young girl full of laughter and innocence. I grew up in New York City with my parents, my brothers, and my sisters. Our home was always full of life, filled with the sounds of laughter, chatter, and sometimes even silly fights between siblings. I remember the smell of my mother's cooking, the way my father would sit with a newspaper in hand, and the carefree days of my youth when the world seemed so safe and promising. One sunny afternoon, when I was around 20 years old, my mother asked me to go to the store to bring some groceries. It was just another ordinary day, or so I thought. I reached the store, picked up what I needed, and walked to the counter to pay. That was when I realized I had made a terrible mistake. I had forgotten my wallet at home. Embarrassed, I froze for a moment, not knowing what to say. Behind the counter stood a young man, perhaps in his early 20s. He was Indian, tall, handsome, and had the kindest eyes I had ever seen. I nervously explained that I had forgotten my money at home and that I would have to put everything back. But instead of being annoyed, he smiled warmly and said, "It's okay. Take the groceries with you. You can pay me later." I was shocked. Nobody had ever shown me such trust before. His kindness touched my heart, and as I walked home with the groceries in my hands, his face remained in my mind. 2 days later, I returned to the store to pay him back. This time, he invited me to sit for a while. He offered me a drink, spoke politely, and treated me with respect in a way that made me feel special. That was the beginning. That was the moment when our friendship started. Soon, we began meeting more often. After his work, he would sometimes take me for a walk in the park, or we would go to watch a movie together. Slowly, I found myself drawn to him. His simplicity, his respect, his charm, it all captured my heart. One evening, as we walked by the river, he stopped, looked into my eyes, and told me he loved me. My heart skipped a beat. I had never felt such emotions before, and when he asked me if I would marry him, without thinking twice, I said yes. I thought I had found the love of my life, but I had no idea that this yes would change the entire course of my life. When I told my family about him, I thought they would see the kindness in his heart the same way I did. I thought they would understand that love knows no borders, no religions, no colors. But I was wrong. The moment I mentioned that he was Indian, their faces turned cold. My father's voice grew stern as he said, "No, Anna, this cannot happen. You are our daughter, and you will not bring shame to this family." My mother's eyes filled with fear and disappointment, while my brothers and sisters whispered behind my back. Suddenly, the warm home I had always known felt like a prison. I tried to reason with them. I told them about his kindness, his honesty, and how much he respected me, but they refused to listen. To them, he was simply not one of us. My father's final words echoed in my mind. "If you choose him, you are no longer our daughter." That night, I cried myself to sleep. My heart was torn between the family I had always loved and the man who had stolen my heart. Days passed, and my family's rejection grew harsher. They watched me closely, refusing to let me meet him, refusing to hear his name. But love is stronger than chains. One evening, I met him in secret. With tears in my eyes, I told him everything. How my family had rejected us. How they would never allow this marriage. He held my hands tightly, his eyes full of determination. "Anna," he said softly, "we don't need anyone else. We just need each other. Let's build a life together." In that moment, I made a choice that would change everything. I chose him. I chose love. We planned everything carefully. I took some of my jewelry and savings from home. One quiet night, I packed a small bag, left a letter for my family, and walked out of the only home I had ever known. My heart broke as I closed the door behind me, knowing I might never see them again. Together, we boarded a bus to San Diego, far away from New York and the disapproving eyes of my family. The journey was long, but my heart was full of hope. I held his hand tightly, dreaming of the life we would build together. In San Diego, we rented a small apartment, using my jewelry and savings. We started a small business, nothing big, just enough to survive. He worked hard and so did I. Slowly, things began to grow. For the first time, I felt free. I was building a life with the man I loved, away from the shadows of my family's judgment. We laughed, we explored, we went to the beach on weekends, watched movies, enjoyed the little joys of life. For 4 years, everything felt like a dream come true. I thought I had made the right decision. I thought love had conquered all. But love, I would learn, is not always enough. For 4 years, I lived in what I thought was paradise. Every morning, I would wake up beside him, cook for us, and dream about our future together. I believed our love was unshakable, that nothing could come between us. But life has a cruel way of showing you the truth. One afternoon, I returned home earlier than usual. The door was slightly open, and as I stepped inside, I froze. My heart stopped. There he was, my husband, the man I had left everything for, lying in bed with another woman. At that moment, the world around me shattered. The groceries slipped from my hands, the bags falling to the floor with a loud thud. He looked at me in shock, quickly pulling the sheets around himself, while the other woman scrambled to grab her clothes. "Anna, it's not what you think," he said, his voice trembling. But his eyes told me the truth. I screamed, I cried, I shouted words I didn't even know were inside me. All the pain of leaving my family, all the sacrifices I had made, came crashing down in that moment. The woman ran out, leaving us both in a storm of rage and betrayal. That night we fought like never before. My voice was raw from screaming, my tears endless. I asked him why. I begged him to tell me why he would do this after everything I had given up for him. But instead of remorse, he grew angry. He accused me of suffocating him, of being too controlling, of not understanding him. Days passed, but the distance between us only grew. I tried to forgive him, tried to believe it was a mistake. But deep inside, the seed of doubt had been planted. Every time he left the house, I wondered where he was going, who he was meeting. And then it happened again. A week later, I caught him with another woman. This time there was no denial, no excuses. When I confronted him, he raised his voice. And for the first time, he raised his hand. The man I had loved, the man I had trusted more than anyone else, hit me. I will never forget that moment. The sting on my cheek, the shock in my heart, the realization that I had not only lost my family but had tied my life to a man who would betray and hurt me. But I couldn't go back. How could I return to New York? How could I face the family I had abandoned? I had burned every bridge, and now I was trapped in a cage of my own making. I told myself things would get better, that maybe he would change. I tried to hold on to the fragments of our love, even as they slipped through my fingers. But deep inside I knew, the dream I had built was crumbling, and soon it would collapse completely. The weeks that followed were filled with silence, anger, and distance. We no longer laughed together, no longer shared our dreams. I lived in the same house with him, but it felt like I was living with a stranger, a cruel stranger. One morning I woke up and found the bed empty. His side was cold, untouched, as if he had not returned the entire night. I sat there waiting, telling myself he would walk through the door any moment. Hours passed. The morning turned into afternoon, the afternoon into evening, and still he did not come. By nightfall, I was pacing around the room, my heart racing with fear. I told myself he was just angry, that he needed space, but a voice deep inside whispered something darker. The next day I went to his office. The place looked abandoned. Papers were scattered, drawers were empty, and the people working there looked at me with pity. That was when one of them hesitantly told me the truth. "Your husband sold the business. He took the money and left." The words struck me like a knife in my chest. I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled as I clutched the table for support. The man I had trusted with my life, the man I had given everything for, had betrayed me in the cruelest way. He had taken not just my love, but my money, my stability, my security, and he had vanished. For days I searched for him. I went to every place I thought he might be, asked everyone I could, but nobody knew anything. It was as if he had erased himself from San Diego completely. At night, I would sit on the floor of our empty apartment, staring at the door, hoping he would walk in and tell me it was all a mistake. I would cry until my eyes burned, asking myself over and over, why did I trust him? Why did I choose him over my family? But no answer came. Only silence. And yet, despite everything, part of me still longed to see him. I told myself that maybe, just maybe, he was confused, that maybe he would return. But weeks turned into months, and hope slowly began to die inside me. I sold what little was left of our belongings to survive. I lived in fear, shame, and loneliness. I couldn't return to New York. How could I face my parents? My siblings, after betraying their trust? No, I was trapped in this prison of my own choices. And then one night, as I sat in the darkness, a thought came to me. If he was not in America, maybe he had gone back to India. After all, that was his homeland. That was where he would feel safe. The next morning, with trembling hands and a broken heart, I decided. I would go to India. I would find him. I would demand answers. I had no idea that this decision would lead me into the deepest despair of my life. Once the thought of finding him in India took root in my mind, it consumed me. Every waking moment I planned. I gathered what little savings I had left, sold a few remaining pieces of jewelry, and began the long process of arranging my passport and visa. It took months, but I was determined. I told myself that once I found him, everything would make sense, that he would explain, that we would somehow rebuild. When the day finally came, I boarded the plane to Delhi with trembling hands and a heart full of fragile hope. As the aircraft lifted off the ground, I looked out of the window and whispered a silent prayer. God, please help me find him. Please give me one more chance. Landing in India was overwhelming. The air was different. The streets were crowded, noisy, and alive with colors and smells I had never experienced before. I clutched the piece of paper in my hand, the address he had once given me, the only clue I had. I made my way to that address, my heart pounding with each step. When I finally arrived, I knocked on the door, praying silently that he would open it. But when the door creaked open, a stranger stood before me, an old man with tired eyes. "Yes, who are you?" he asked. I'm looking for someone," I said, my voice shaking. "His name is Rajesh. He told me he lived here." The old man frowned. "Rajesh? No one by that name lives here. And as far as I know, no one with that name has ever lived here." The paper slipped from my hand. My heart sank into my stomach. I tried to argue, tried to show the address again, but the man shook his head firmly and closed the door. I stood there in the dusty street, staring at the closed door, feeling the world spin around me. My legs gave way, and I sat down on the steps, tears streaming down my face. Could it be possible? Had he lied to me even about his own home? But I refused to give up. For weeks I wandered through Delhi, asking people, showing his photo to strangers, searching markets, temples, bus stations. Every time someone shook their head, a piece of me died. Finally, exhausted and broken, I admitted the truth to myself. He was gone. He had vanished not just from my life, but from the world I could reach. I had given up everything, my family, my city, my dreams, for a man who had erased me from his story. With no money, no family, and no answers, I drifted. I traveled from city to city, hoping that one day, by some miracle, I would see his face again. But each journey ended in disappointment. And then finally I stopped in Mumbai. Something inside me gave up. I was tired of searching, tired of chasing shadows. So I found an old crumbling house to rent and I stayed. It wasn't home. It never would be, but it was where my broken heart would live out the years. Mumbai was not a city I had chosen out of love or desire. It was simply where my search ended, where my strength gave out. By the time I arrived, I was drained, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I had no family to lean on, no friends to comfort me, and no man to hold my hand. I was a stranger in a country that was never mine. I found a small old house on the outskirts of the city. Its walls were cracked, its roof leaked during the monsoon, and its windows rattled in the wind. But it was cheap, and it gave me a place to hide my tears. That house became my prison and my refuge. In the beginning, survival was hard. I had almost no money left and my jewelry was long gone. I took up small sewing jobs, stitching clothes for neighbors. Some days I cleaned houses. On other days, I sold little homemade snacks at the corner of the street. I did whatever I could to feed myself, to keep the roof over my head. But the real struggle was not survival. The real struggle was the silence. At night, when the city outside buzzed with life, I sat alone in my room staring at the ceiling. Memories haunted me. I saw my parents' faces, the siblings I had abandoned, the laughter of my childhood home in New York. And then, like a knife through my chest, I saw his face, the man I had once called my husband, the man I had given up everything for. I asked myself every night, why? Why did I do it? Was love worth the cost of losing everyone who truly loved me? Was one man's smile worth a lifetime of tears? The years passed slowly, each one stealing a little more of my youth, a little more of my hope. My hair turned gray, my face wrinkled, and my body grew weak. But the wound inside my heart never healed. It only grew deeper. Sometimes, I would see young couples walking hand in hand on the busy streets of Mumbai. Their laughter would pierce my soul. I would look away, hiding my tears, but inside I screamed. I envied them. Not for their wealth, not for their beauty, but for the simple fact that they had someone who chose to stay. I had chosen love, but love had abandoned me. Now at 60, I sit in this same broken house, my body frail, my hands trembling. I live alone with my memories of a family I betrayed and a man who betrayed me. And as I sit here, I wonder, was my whole life a punishment for that one mistake? Did God write this fate for me? Or did I carve it with my own foolish heart? The answer never comes. Only silence. Always silence. As the years slipped by, regret became my closest companion. It crept into my mornings when I opened my eyes to the cracked ceiling above me, and it followed me into my nights as I cried myself to sleep on a lonely bed. Every wrinkle on my face, every gray strand of hair, felt like a reminder of the time I had lost. I was no longer the young girl who had run away from home for love. I was an old woman, weathered by disappointment and loneliness. Sometimes I would sit by the window, staring at the bustling street below. I saw families walking together, mothers holding their children's hands, fathers carrying grocery bags, siblings laughing together. The sight cut deep into me. It reminded me of the home I had left behind in New York. I often wondered what had happened to my parents. Were they still alive? Did they ever forgive me in their hearts? Or did they die thinking of me as the daughter who had betrayed them? The thought haunted me. And yet, I could never gather the courage to go back. My pride, my shame, and my fear chained me here in Mumbai, far away from the people who truly loved me. And then there was him, the man who had ruined my life. Even after decades, I could not forget his face, his smile, his eyes, the way he had once held my hands and promised me forever. That memory was a curse. Because every time I remembered the man I loved, I also remembered the man who betrayed me, abandoned me, and left me to rot in a foreign land. I sometimes ask myself, was it love, or was it an illusion? Did he ever truly love me? Or was I just a foolish girl blinded by sweet words and gestures? I would never know. The hardest part of regret is not just remembering what happened, but realizing what could have been. If I had listened to my parents, maybe I would have married someone else, a man who would have respected me, built a family with me, given me children to fill my empty house with laughter. Maybe I would have been a mother, a grandmother by now, surrounded by love instead of silence. But instead I sit here alone, at 60, with no husband, no children, no family, and no one to call my own. The silence of my house often feels like it is suffocating me. I talk to myself just to hear a voice. I hold old photographs of strangers, pretending they are my loved ones. I light a candle every night, whispering prayers into the darkness, hoping that God will forgive me for my mistakes. Regret has become the air I breathe, the food I eat, the bed I sleep on. It is the only thing I own. They say time heals all wounds, but whoever said that never lived my life. Time has not healed me. It has only stretched the pain across decades, making it heavier with every passing year. At first, I thought the tears would eventually stop, that one day I would wake up and the memories would no longer haunt me. But they never left. Even after 40 years, I still see his face in my dreams. Sometimes he smiles at me, like in the early days, and I wake up with my heart aching. Other times, I see him walking away, leaving me alone, and I wake up screaming. This pain has become my shadow. No matter where I go, no matter what I do, it follows me. I tried once to start again. In Mumbai, a kind neighbor suggested I join a women's community group. They welcomed me, tried to give me comfort, and even introduced me to people who could help me, but I could never truly belong. My heart was chained to the past, to a man who had destroyed me. I carried my betrayal like a scar carved into my soul. There were days I hated him with every fiber of my being. I wanted to curse his name, to spit at the memory of his touch. But there were other days when I hated myself more, for still loving him in some broken corner of my heart. That is the cruelty of betrayal. It does not only destroy your trust in others, but it destroys your trust in yourself. Sometimes I ask myself, why didn't I walk away sooner? Why didn't I see the signs? Why did I give him chance after chance? Even after the lies, the cheating, the violence? The answer is simple and bitter. Because I loved him more than I loved myself. And that was my greatest mistake. The betrayal did not just break my marriage, it broke my spirit. It stole my confidence, my laughter, my belief in happiness. It made me doubt everything and everyone. For years, I avoided friendships, avoided closeness. because I was terrified of being hurt again. Even now, when people try to be kind to me, I feel an invisible wall between us. I smile. I nod. But deep inside, I whisper, "Don't come too close." Everyone leaves. Everyone betrays. It is a lonely way to live, but it is the only way I know. And yet, as much as I despise my past, I cannot erase it. My story is my curse, but it is also my truth. A truth I carry in my heart, in my trembling hands, in the lines of my tired face. I am not just a woman who was betrayed. I am a woman who wasted her entire life chasing a man who was never truly mine. And now, as the years fade away, old age is not kind to those who are alone. Every ache in my bones, every slow step I take, reminds me that there is no one here to hold my hand, no one to ask, "Are you okay, Anna?" When I was young, I dreamed of being a mother. I imagined children running around my house, their laughter echoing through the halls, their little hands reaching for mine. I imagined growing old with a family around me, with grandchildren on my lap, with love filling every corner of my home. But none of those dreams came true. My house is silent. My lap is empty. My arms ache for children I never had. There are days when I sit in front of the mirror, staring at the old woman looking back at me. Her hair is white, her skin sagging, her eyes tired. Sometimes I don't even recognize her. Where is the young girl who once laughed with her brothers and sisters in New York? Where is the girl who once believed in love? So deeply she was willing to leave everything behind. She is gone. All that remains is me, a ghost of who I used to be. The loneliness is the worst in the evenings. I make myself a simple meal, sit at the small wooden table and eat in silence. The chair across from me is always empty. I sometimes place a second plate, pretending someone will join me. But no one ever does. When I hear the neighbors outside celebrating birthdays, weddings, or festivals, I feel the ache in my chest grow stronger. Their houses are full of people, while mine is full of memories. I want to knock on their doors and join them, but then I remember I don't belong. I am just the old foreign woman who lives alone, and yet the deepest regret is not just about him. It is about my family. I often wonder if my mother cried for me at night, if my father's anger turned into sorrow, if my siblings ever searched for me. Did they hope I would return? Did they keep my room untouched for years? Or did they erase me from their lives completely? I will never know. I was too stubborn, too ashamed to ever go back. And now, even if I wanted to, it is too late. They are gone, and so is my chance to ask for forgiveness. That is the cruelty of life. You don't realize the value of what you have until it's gone. I gave up my family for a man who didn't deserve me, and now I have neither. As I grow older, I no longer fear death. What I fear is dying without ever being remembered, without ever being forgiven, without anyone to cry for me. Now, as I sit in this old, crumbling house in Mumbai, with the weight of 60 years pressing on my shoulders, I know my time is running short. My body is weak, my hands tremble, and my breath grows heavier each day. But before I leave this world, there is something I must say. My story is not just about betrayal. It is about choices, about the dangerous power of love when it blinds you, and the cost of ignoring those who truly care for you. To the young girls who may one day hear my words, listen carefully. Do not mistake kindness for love, and do not confuse charm for character. A man's beauty, his smile, his sweet words, they can be illusions, as fragile as smoke. What matters is not how he makes your heart race, but how he stands by you when life becomes difficult. Love is not enough. Respect, honesty, loyalty, these are what build a life. Without them, love is only a dream that will one day turn into a nightmare. I gave up everything, my family, my home, my future, for a man who promised me forever, but gave me nothing but betrayal. I thought I was choosing love, but I was choosing destruction. If I had listened to my parents, maybe my life would have been different. Maybe I would have known the joy of children, the comfort of family, the peace of a husband who truly cared. Instead, I am here, an old woman with no one to call her own. My days are filled with silence, my nights with regret, and the man I once loved, he is gone, lost in the wind, his name a curse that still lingers on my lips. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: never abandon those who truly love you for someone who only pretends to. Parents, siblings, real friends, they are your true treasures. Do not trade them for a stranger's promise. Once they are gone, once you lose them, you will never get them back. And if you ever find yourself betrayed, remember this: betrayal is not your fault. It is the choice of the betrayer. Do not let it destroy your faith in yourself. Love yourself enough to walk away. I wish I had. Now, as I look back on my life, I see a road filled with mistakes, regrets, and endless pain, but I also see lessons written in every scar. If my story saves even one soul from making the same mistake, then perhaps my suffering has a purpose. I am Anna, once a young girl full of dreams in New York, now an old woman forgotten in Mumbai. My story is a warning, my life a lesson. Do not repeat my fate. Choose wisely, love wisely, live wisely, and maybe, just maybe, you will find the happiness that I never did.